All right, Nick, let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons. Obviously, we know Atlanta for now has found their quarterback of the future in Michael Penix Jr. He's been really great so far, but now everybody's been wondering what happens with Kirk Cousins. Atlanta comes out, they say, well, we're happy enough to keep him on this roster, but I think there's some things they haven't done with Cousins yet that have alluded to their true plan and what they really want to do with him. I think it's to be very interesting for Atlanta fans to see the breakdown of everything going on here. But before we dive into that, I'm Andrew, that's Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, Kirk Cousins, Atlanta Falcons, something key here they have not done yet really shows what their true intentions are with Cousins. Let's jump into this article and then we can break everything down and what it means on the other side. This is from NBC Sports. It says, the Falcons have tried to create the impression that they're committed to keeping quarterback Kirk Cousins as the understudy to Michael Penix Jr. in 2025. Some think they're bluffing. One key fact supports this notion that the Falcons are biding their time with Cousins. The Cousins contract has a provision that allows the Atlanta Falcons to automatically restructure the deal whenever they want. They have not yet exercised that right, and in doing so, they would immediately create $20.996 million in 2025 cap space by reducing his salary from $27.5 million to $1.225 million, paying the difference as a bonus and spreading it over the course of 5 years. If they were serious about keeping Cousins for 2025, it would make sense to create another $20 million in cap space. If they're thinking about trading him, it would make sense to not do that. Not only would they pay him $26.245 million signing bonus instead of sending his $27 million salary to another team, but they would also absorb a much larger cap hit when trading him. I think this shows what the Falcons' true intentions here are with Kirk Cousins. I think this is really interesting. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this one, Nick. But before we get to you, Falcons fans, in the comment section below, we're talking about Kirk Cousins. We're talking about what the Falcons are going to do. Do you believe this? And I think this evidence is pretty revealing of what their true intentions are with Cousins. Do you think they're going to trade Kirk Cousins to another team? And here's my kicker here. If you do believe that, let us know, where do you think he's going? What team do you think is going to grab Kirk Cousins? Curious what your thoughts are about all of this in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts on this latest revelation, I would say, for the Falcons?
Well, I think it's important to understand the Atlanta Falcons needed to free up some cap space. They were over the salary cap limit, so they had to get under it. And there were basically two ways they could do it. One of the way I was mentioned in the article from Pro Football Talk was from NBC is that you restructure Kirk Cousins' contract, right? And you get under the cap space. You free up 20 million bucks in 2025, spread that numbers out on the back end. And now you're under the cap. You can have dollars available to sign your draft picks, plus a few $1 million if someone comes available or something like that. You have a little flexibility there, like every team likes to do. But they didn't do that, right? What's interesting, though, is they did free up the cap space by restructuring AJ Terrell, Chris Lindstrom's, and Jake Matthews deals a few days ago by roughly that same amount, right? About $20 million of cap space opened up in 2025. The folks at SpotTrack ran the analysis. So basically, the Atlanta Falcons are now $12 million under the salary cap. Now they're cap compliant. It'll take about $5 to $6 million to lock down their projected draft picks. So they'll have about $5 to $6 million available for additional moves the rest of the way. So what they've done very clearly here is that instead of doing what they said they were going to do and say, hey, listen, Kirk Cousins is going to be our number two guy, instead of then extending or restructuring his deal to support that, they did the exact opposite and restructured literally everyone else's deal they could restructure to get under the salary cap number. This is a massive signal to the rest of the NFL, right? I guarantee you every single GM, every single team scout, team executive, I think a lot of this time, like, well, do they really want to trade Kirk Cousins or, they kind of shopping him? This is a message. Look, we're trying to trade him. We're trying to get something in return for him, right? We almost don't care what it is. Give us something. And there are a lot of teams that I think would be willing to get Kirk Cousins for something in return, right? If it's something small, I don't know what it could be. Some people say a third round pick if you compare it to like the Matt Ryan deal to the Colts a few years ago. That may be a little bit of a stretch at this point just based on the situation, but it seems likely the Falcons will get something in return for Kirk Cousins. And this is a smart move to make, taking this approach to not restructuring Cousins and restructuring everyone else. Now they have the cap flexibility, so they got that problem solved, and they did it in such a way away. So that way everybody in the NFL knows, listen, we are shopping Kirk Cousins. And basically what that's telling is that if any team wants Cousins, they call Cousins his agent and they call Kirk himself and they say, listen, waive your no trade clause, come here and you'll be a starter or whatever the deal is, or come here and we'll write you a $20 million check or whatever they want to do, right? It's opening up the opportunity. It's basically saying, hey, any other team that wants Kirk, here you go. Go after it, make the calls. We want to ship them. We want to make a deal. Sometimes when it comes to making a deal, and anyone who's ever closed any sort of deal of varying size, whether it's buying a house or selling a company and everything in between, it usually just comes down to both sides being very clear and transparent. I'm here to make a deal. And when that happens, deals get done. And I think that's what the Falcons are trying to do here. They're sending a message saying, we are going to make a deal. We want to make a deal. Forget what we said in terms of PR. That's PR stuff. Right here, when the rubber meets the road, when the dollars count, money talks, we want to make a deal. And to me, that's a sign that a deal will get done. If the Falcons want to make a deal, I think Kirk Cousins wants to make a deal because he wants to play. They'll find some team that's willing to coincide with that. I think the Atlanta Falcons, they will make that trade. I don't know if it happens before the draft or after the draft or the timing of it all. But I think it's undeniable at this point. Kirk Cousins will not be an Atlanta Falcon in 2025.
Yeah, Nick, I think when you look at everything and just how they've approached the situation, it's like you said, it's inevitable at this point. They would have restructured his deal if they wanted to keep him. It just makes too much sense to not do so. It's bad business if they were going to keep him at this point. Now, and I think that's the key here is when you look around the league, there are a couple handful, like 3, maybe 4 teams that still need that quarterback and don't have the draft capital necessarily to go up and get somebody. So I think Kirk Cousins is a great stopgap piece for those teams. I think you look at, Pittsburgh Steelers, they're still looking for a quarterback. I think, that could be something that's interesting to them. I think you look at the San Francisco 49ers. Are they going to pay Brock Purdy all of that money, or do they want to get a guy like Kirk Cousins, bring him in there, keep that going? I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think at this point they probably pay Brock Purdy, but another team to keep in mind. Finally, another team I see they could potentially be in the running here. They already have some quarterbacks, but this team notorious for not making great decisions. So I wouldn't count the Cleveland Browns out of wanting a quarterback. Kenny Pickett, is he the future of your franchise? Probably not. So I think Kirk Cousins is another guy you bring in if you're able to work out a deal there and have him come in, battle for that spot, try to make your team better if that's even possible for the Cleveland Browns at this point. So I think there's a lot to look at here as far as what's going on with the Falcons. I think there's a lot of good moves they could make. I think there's a lot of good stuff. And to your point, I think that's where they're at as far as they're saying, give us anything. Give us a 6. Give us, a 7th round pick. Give us, a Snickers bar and, a Diet Coke or something. We'll take whatever kind of draft capital. We just don't want to cut them, release them. We're not going to do that, but we are willing to trade them for pretty much anything at this point. If I'm a Falcons fan, I'm good with that. Get his dollars off of your books. Save some money with him going to another team. Get any amount of draft capital back for him, and that's a win. That's a major win if they're able to do that. So I think the trajectory of Kirk Cousins and the Falcons is looking good. Atlanta slyly showing their hand, saying, hey, he's available. We want to, trade him. There is options we could have had to show that we don't want to trade him. Obviously, we did not do those. We want Kirk Cousins. We're willing to deal him. So go ahead, give us an offer. We'll consider anything. I think that's a great move by the Falcons. Get him off your books. I think Michael Penix is the future. You realize that now. Kirk Cousins didn't really pan out the way that you want him to. So getting just even anything you could for him would be huge for the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, and it's also important to understand the Falcons here. They have multiple trade partners potentially. You brought up a couple of them. How about a couple more? I think the New York Jets, obviously they got Justin Fields, but they would be in market for another quarterback, I would think, because Fields has a lot of question marks. Even a team like the Tennessee Titans that are likely going to take a quarterback 1 overall, they reportedly are not interested in Will Levis whatsoever for the future. Kirk Cousins could be a perfect stopgap and kind of stabilize that franchise, plus the other teams you mentioned. So there's a market, I think, for Kirk Cousins bidders of about 4, 5, 6 guys. It's just at what price. And at this point, and you kind of brought it up, the Atlanta Falcons should be just trying to get whatever they can in return. For anyone that follows in terms of stock investing advice, I'm a big stock investor. I love this kind of stuff. The worst trades, the worst investments you can make are ones that are going poorly. Let's say you bought it for $1 and now it's down to 40 cents on the dollar. And you're like, I just want it to get back up to $1 so I can sell it and break even. But what inevitably happens is it never does. And so right now there is a somewhat of a demand for Kirk Cousins. So you bought him for $1. He's now worth 40 cents. Maybe now you can get 45 cents back or 50 cents back if you're lucky in terms of getting like a fourth round draft pick or something like that. But if you sit here and wait and say, okay, well, I want more than that. I want a second or a third and a fifth. I want to try and get to 75 or 80 cents on the dollar back. It ain't going to happen. And eventually Kirk Cousins is going to be worth zero on the dollar because you're going to have to cut him, right? And maybe even negative because he'll be a distraction in terms of locker room, taking resources and time away of focusing on Michael Penix Jr. exclusively. Now's the time to get this deal done if you're Terry Fontenot or the Atlanta Falcons. I know people are going to wait for the draft. It may happen a month or so after the draft. Like there's a lot of things that could shake out, may happen during the draft. But now is the time to be very clear behind the scenes in these conversations. You don't be public about it, right? Dumb teams are public about, oh, we're shopping Kirk Cousins. Keep it under wraps, right? You want to make sure everything happens behind closed doors. Work with all these potential bidders. They've signaled that with their moves in terms of not restructuring him, which is the right approach to take. And then you can go out, find the bidder, get your 45 cents on the dollar. Again, it was a losing deal. We all understand that. We had high hopes. It didn't work out. Don't turn a bad deal into a terrible deal. I think the Falcons are doing what they can to avoid that, and it would be the right approach to take. They just really have to execute and find a way to pull off this trade over the coming weeks and over the coming months.